Now, welcome to the second segment of World Day of the Poor 2021 on the CCSJ Trinidad and Tobago Facebook page. And as before, we'll introduce the clerics of all faiths alphabetically, but first we will start this with His Grace, Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon, since this event is organized by the Catholic Commission for Social Justice.
Thanks again. It was beautiful to hear the different perspectives of the faith traditions and how the sacred scriptures of each tradition speaks to the care for the poor. And, it's one of the pieces of our humanity that really unites us. And it's one of the pieces of the faith that really unites us. In the Catholic tradition here in Trinidad and Tobago, the first school for the poor in Port of Spain was started by a cleric. His name was Francis de Rida. And de Rida started the school with great opposition from the government of the day, from even his own bishop, from everybody. But he was a free colored who became a priest and really pushed the boundaries of inclusion at a time when that was not possible in Trinidad and Tobago. And so I wanted to start with that story because from the very beginning, the church has had this relationship with those on the fringe and on the fringes of our society. Today, the church has several parts of it or of its organization that do tremendous work with the poor. And, I think of St. Vincent de Paul. They're so well known and the work they do with the people who are living on the streets. The home that they have for children with HIV/AIDS. In many homes they have all over Trinidad and Tobago for the elderly who are on the fringe. In most of our 61 parishes, they feed families on a monthly basis. They engage in visits to the elderly who are shut in and do tangible help for them. Or Living Water Community, which is also so well known. Most people today know Living Water Community for its migrant and refugee ministry, because that's one of the issues to the fore of the society. And they've been in that ministry for 30 years, long before Venezuela started to come to Trinidad and Tobago. But they also have a home for children who have been abandoned and for women who have been abused. They have another home for teenage boys who are living on the streets or would be living on the streets except for this home. But these are teenage boys in deep social trouble. And it's a second chance family for socially displaced young men. Living Water also has a drug rehabilitation center up on Mount St. Benedict, and a hospice for those dying with cancer, and a second hospice for those dying with HIV/AIDS. Every day they feed those who live on the streets in Port of Spain. And during the pandemic, they were doing 3,000, 4,000 hampers a month for those who are on the fringe of society. And every day they sent sandwiches downtown to those who are in the different communities in town, in Port of Spain, who were in trouble because they did not have the wherewithal to buy food for themselves. Eternal Light Community is another one of our shining lights. They have 2 homes for unwed mothers. Then they have homes for young girls who are socially displaced and for young boys who are socially displaced. They have lots of different things happening for teens and for those who are on the fringe. They run a couple farms, and the food for the farms helps to do the ministries that they do. They have one trade school right now in Tunapuna, which caters for those who have dropped out of the educational system, and about to open another trade school in Sealots, where they've been walking Sealots for the last 5 years now, and now starting a trade school in Sealots. Why? Because it's one of the most neglected communities in the East Port of Spain area. And that Sealots project is not just going to be a school, it's going to reach out to the parents for development, it's going to reach out to the community for development, and seek to be a presence in the midst of that community to offer a pathway to development for that community. Zion communities in South, and they do such great work accompanying families, especially poor families who are, on the edge of poverty and struggling to make things happen. They do a lot of work within schools and within our parishes to help families and to help those who are single moms and those who are on the fringe really find a way to make it every single day of their life. And their work is really with the people who are so much on the fringe of society. During the pandemic last year, the church really stepped up to the plate to do a ministry for those who are on the fringe. And together with the work of the communities that I've spoken about, the parishes, we would have fed about 70,000 people in the 3 critical months of the lockdown, when people had lost their salaries and did not have anywhere to turn. And whereas the government gave out 3 tranches of money to help the poor, what we spent was nearly double what they gave. And this year again, in the 4 critical months this year, from June on, what we spent in giving out hampers, and again, we would have given out about 40,000 hampers in the critical months this year as a church. We run 118 primary schools. Many of those schools are in areas of poverty, and so a lot of the children in our schools are finding it difficult for education. And we now have a program, especially for the East Port of Spain, where we're really trying to find a way to help the poor child succeed in school, because that's the only way out of it. 21 secondary schools throughout the country. St. Dominic's Home has been the orphanage in the country, together with the other orphanages for 150 years or more. And our 20 parishes on a regular monthly basis do feeding for the poor, but also 60 parishes do feeding for the poor every month. But 20 of our parishes have direct ministries for the refugee and the migrant, and are doing incredible work. Some of our parishes have started a school or a safe space for the children, and they would do job opportunities. They would do food hampers for the migrants and the refugee children, and for the families as a whole. So this is just a little snapshot of some of the things that we do as church in Trinidad and Tobago in our work, in the work for the poor, and of course the work of CCSG and their advocacy for those on the margins, and the strident push for inclusion and for ensuring that the voice of the poor is always heard within our society.
Thank you, Your Grace. Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon. That was very, very moving. And I hope that we all can learn from what you've said, and we can all support all the religions that represented today. It's my pleasure now to ask the Right Reverend Joy Abdul Mohan from the Presbyterian Church to speak next.
And so I want to share with you that the Presbyterian Church, through its Board of Social Responsibility and other stakeholders, assist in the reduction of poverty on a daily basis. One, a benevolent fund. Our churches, all 108, have a benevolent fund, a love offering that is received at every Holy Communion service, which is utilized to make provisions for the less fortunate in and beyond the communities in which the churches are located. And this fund is carefully monitored to ensure that it is used for the purpose it was received. Secondly, we have a food bank, the Board of Social Responsibility Relief Bank. This is organized with supermarkets to make up hamper packages that are paid for and distributed. The Presbyterian Church has developed a good relationship with a few supermarkets and get reasonable and discounted wholesale prices. A third very important thing that we engaged in, migrant support group. The Presbyterian Church reaches out to the migrant community and continues to provide assistance to the poorest of the poor. But special effort was necessary by the church to reach out to this very vulnerable sector. As we all know, the Venezuelan issue became a very political one, but our church's approach was one of a humanitarian nature. The PCTT partnered again with non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to provide food support and school supplies, including computer devices, to the migrant population. And two such organizations were the Living Water Community and the Laramine Migrant Support Group, LARMS. This joint initiative is a truly ecumenical partnership for compelling and necessary outreach to a very depressed community. A fourth initiative, Women and Children. In collaboration with the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the Rapid Fire Kids Foundation, and the Trinidad Eye Hospital, the Presbyterian Church provides food, clothing, medical, and school supplies, eyeglasses, and wheelchairs for many of our children, and of course, for women in particular. A fifth initiative that we are still working on, an agricultural farming project for food security and sustainability. The Presbyterian Church is in the process of identifying several of its vacant lands and properties to start an agricultural farming project for food security and sustainability. With the scarcity of food, forex, and shipping challenges in recent times due to the global pandemic, the Presbyterian Church believes in going back to the land, Mother Earth, to provide food for the hungry. One suggestion we have is that there is no need to reinvent the wheel, as it were, to create new projects. What is needed in our country is more cohesive partnership and networking among all stakeholders, including government agencies, NGOs, and FBOs. And those are some of the initiatives taken by the PCTT and some initiatives that we hope to achieve and implement in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Joy Abdul Mohan from the Presbyterian Church. I'd like to ask Brother Shafiudeen Ali from the Islamic Faith to speak next.
Okay, that's okay now. Yeah. So in recent times, we have witnessed an increase in poverty in our land, resulting from the loss of income due to the pandemic. The Muslim community has been addressing this with our Zakah and Sadaqah funds. The mechanism have been used to assist others with paying and making the rents, purchasing grocery items, and more significant has been our hamper distribution program. Some hampers are paid for using government subvention, but the bulk comes from the private donations. Approximately 77,000 hampers were handed out by Muslim organizations. Government subvention accounted for 3,600 hampers, which consists of roughly under 5%. Typically, the hampers consist of grocery list, a grocery list excluding meats. The Barakah Foundation and Islamic Broadcasting Network and their well-wishers prepared and distributed 56,000 hampers to the needy, a very commendable effort. Another 21,000 hampers were sponsored and distributed by Muslim organizations and Jamaats. Let me add, the Zakat funds and their committee have a number of poor people on their monthly payroll, so to speak, to ensure that some families with ongoing dependency are taken care of. As a community, furthermore, as a part of our Eid al-Fitr celebration, which really is the culmination of the month of Ramadan, Imams solicit a one-time annual donation from members based on the number of occupants in their households. These donations are again used to prepare hampers, which are distributed towards the poor and the needy. To get the congregation involved, they are asked to identify the needy in their neighborhood, and then they deliver the hampers to them. There are over 75 congregations or Jamaats in the country, and most participate in such hamper programs. Further help is rendered to the poor and needy as part of our Eid al-Adha celebration. Animals are slaughtered to commemorate Prophet Abraham's attempt to sacrifice his son. A 2/3 portion of the meat, which is obtained from those sacrifices, are shared with poor families. As an example, at the TML St. Joseph Mosque, 6 bulls and over 50 sheep were slaughtered this year. Most Jamaats across the country engaged in this annual practice. There's a lot of charity being given by Muslims throughout the country. Of course, there's a belief that they should not be advertised, and hence it's very difficult to capture all of what is taking place. There are small groups that I'm aware of who focus on housing the poor. They solicit contributions and they build modest homes for needy families. There's another large group of Muslims of T&T. That's another organization which focus on looking after the poor, mostly outside of Trinidad and Tobago. They ship containers of food and clothing to different countries. Following the Haiti disaster, they would have shipped container loads of goods to assist the people in Haiti. Also, there are Muslim doctors I know who run free medical clinics, maybe one day of the week or so. So it's actually very difficult to capture the amount of charity that's being given by the Muslim community, except for the ones that comes out of the large organizations. However, the Muslim acknowledge that the giving of charity is particularly important today. Many people have lost their jobs and are unable to feed their families and pay their monthly bills. Government aid is simply not enough and does not always reach the most needy. I know in your guidelines for today's conversation, you ask for suggestions that may be used to target the needy. I think a very effective way it can be done is by asking faith-based organizations to identify the needy in their communities and provide a list of the poor, which government can then address, I think, so that we see the most vulnerable in society receive the aid that they need. I'm really very proud of the Muslim brothers and sisters who have come to their aid. I also applaud the non-Muslim religious organizations which have engaged in similar efforts. We therefore ask God Almighty to inspire our hearts and give generously, such that we can strive to eradicate poverty, if not in the world, certainly in our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Shafiudeen Ali from the Islamic Faith. It's my pleasure now to ask Dr. Knolly Clarke from the Anglican Church to speak next.
Thank you very much indeed to speak again. I just want to move away a little from the idea of individual communities. talking about their own response. And I want first of all to praise so many of the persons who have spoken here, the Archbishop, Imam, and all that. But I think it is time now that we don't just talk about things that we hand out, but how are we going to empower the poor? Poverty, my brothers and sisters, in my own theological reflection, is not just giving charity. It is empowering the poor to engage in their own future. And maybe we should have a institute which would enable the pastors, the imams, to enable the poor, because the poor are people who need to engage in their own future. We must not just only give them things. I remember when Dr. Hamid and myself ran what we call the Caribbean Ecumenical Program, the late Dr. Hamid. Our response to people was to provide them with projects, programs that they could empower themselves. Take, for example, the men and women who were in the cane fields in the days of sugar, particularly the women. We had what we call a rural aid program. And a whole group of people enabled those women. Some of them could not read, they could not write. We did that work, and we also did the work of providing them at Christmas time to work with their hands. They had great skills with their hands. And we made them make toys and gifts which they sold to people. We had bazaars, type bazaars, and we used St. Andrew's Theological College, where I was a lecturer there at one time. With the CCC had a program there. And we brought those people there to train them to get themselves empowered. So I think it's more than just, I want to compliment so many of you for what you do. We do that kind of thing too. But I think we're in a phase now whereby we have to empower the poor to take hold of their future. And unless we do that, then we will only be given, the cycle of poverty could be just limited to giving things and so on. So I like what maybe we all, Leela Ramdeen, and I think she has the kind of verve, self and others and Iram too, they have the kind of verve to let's organize workshops, for the poor, and empower them to take hold of their futures. And I think if we can do that as a community of religious community, it will be a very important exercise in our country, because a lot of the poor are being exploited. The whole question of the man-woman relationship. Too many of our women are being violated because they have to depend upon the thing. When I look at the Alexander program, himself and Marlon, I see them begging men to take hold of their responsibility, and women too. So I think it's more than just giving things. I think it's empowerment. We want to transform, to heal the thing of poverty. People are wounded by their poverty. And too many of them are things. We have to help them to take seriously this question that they are human beings and they can be instruments. God has called them with their, and a lot of them have a lot of gifts. And we must begin with the family at home. It's just not the family at home is important. And there is where we have to give our children, that's another thing, our children, a sense of purpose, a sense of direction, a sense of focus, so that they could really take hold of their future. And that is the challenge I think we have as religious communities, where perhaps not big things in your masjids, in your temples, in your palaces, in our churches, the cathedrals, and so on. We ought to have things for the poor. Teach them art and directions, and we do it together. We do it together. I remember we had a program called another program called SEPAC, and the vision was, you do not hand out fishes, you teach people how to fish. And I think we are in this stage. This is very good, and I want to commend Leela and Marcia and Ira for this kind of exercise, and the Archbishop and all of us. But on the other hand, I think we need to take a step further, carry this exercise further to the work with the poor in a new way, so to speak, and work with it if we agree that we have a lot to give, not one, and it must not be one religion or one religious group. It's the team working together, working in the thing, the Anglicans working along with the Muslims, the Catholic and the Anglicans and all of us, the Christians, the Hindus, all working together in temples, in things, and in different places, working together to empower the poor. That's what I want to say as my contribution.
Thank you so much, Dr. Knolly Clarke from the Anglican Church, for that rousing call for unity between religions and to encourage the poor to empower themselves, to take hold of their future, to transform, and for healing. I'm sure that Ms. Ramdeen will take that up and I'm like you all, I'm an invitee, and she and her committee have done all the work. So I'd like to make that clear. Next, I'd like to ask Seventh Day Adventist pastor, Dr. Clive Dottin, to speak.
Let me carry you in the few minutes I have left on a journey. The year 2004, Hurricane Ivan struck Grenada with full force. In fact, we had a little joke, it was tragic, yes, but one church, one house actually changed the address. Now, this was where a lot of churches were, destroyed, and we had that ability. We believed that we should join with other church groups and rebuild churches. So that, the Catholic Anglican Church, was devastated. We joined there. So that the Seventh Day Adventist Church, we believe in reaching out to everyone. We believe that everyone must be included in our prophetic gaze and perspective. So when Hurricane Ivan blasted Grenada, and a lot of despair and disappointment and depression, business folks died even after that. They couldn't cope with the death of their business, the death of their lifeline. That was so critical. So what we have in our church globally, we have a group called ASI. All right, they look to get the resources like the landowners in the post-Pentecostal era that triggered the issue of liquidating assets to help the poor. So we have that group, that follows the example in the post-Pentecostal period in Acts chapter 2. It's called ASI, the Associate Support Industries. All right, that is what we have. And then we have what is called the community services. The history of the church was 1874 and 1880. Very early into the church, that what is called a benevolent society. That became the Dorcas Society. It was basically a group of women meeting together, sewing clothes, trying to clothe the needy and the poor, and to even feed them. And then after that, we came to what is called the welfare services. And today, what we have, the evolving group, is the community services. So you'll see community services vans and buses. We have divided the country into zones. So every zone will have their special transport, advertised community services of Seventh Day Adventists. When there's a crisis, when we have to go in dangerous areas and high-risk areas to deliver food and hampers, all right? When we have to deal with the reconstruction efforts and help people rebuild their homes. What we have, the community services, and ADRA, the Adventist Development Relief Association, and ASI, the Associate Support Industries Limited. What we have is these two groups forming a network. So every church has a community services leader, all right? And they will assess the needs of the membership and the needs of the community, and network with any other group and any religion in providing support, because we believe in a community initiative. So we have the local church with the community services, and then we have the zones, and they will look at creating institutions, okay, like support groups and support services. We have in the youth department the Master Guide Club. So we have three groups coming together: the ASI, okay, and then we have the community services, and then we have ADRA. And in addition to those three groups, we have the health ministries department, okay. So all these groups come together and network, provide relief to the poor and the hurting and the suffering. That is what it is all about. So there's an individual responsibility, okay, and then there is a corporate responsibility. So let me go back to Grenada to give you an example. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Caribbean Union Conference of Seventh Day Adventists. We triggered an institution called Operation Nehemiah. It is the latest, piece of our infrastructure that we have now. And Operation Nehemiah, we had skilled people, masons and carpenters and builders, okay, that went to Grenada from all over the region. And from time to time, they would travel, some of them using their own funds, not dependent on organizational funds, because there's a vision of the Good Samaritan model. And they would buy the tickets and go to Grenada, carry their tools. Churches around would supply the materials. We did that for Grenada and do it for individuals within, the various islands, because the Caribbean Union Conference consists of 25 island territories, and it's called the Caribbean Union Conference of Seventh Day Adventists. So the Nehemiah project has a theme, all right? We cannot come down. Remember the story of Nehemiah when he was attacked by Sanballat and the rest? We cannot come down. So all over the Caribbean, when there's a crisis, and in Trinidad, when we have massive floods, these four groups, the Health Ministries Department, the Community Services, all right, ADRA and ASI come together to minister to the needs where there's a significant need. For example, if a house is damaged, and of course, the government assistance is also sought, and whatever government department, we will network with them. But we will not totally depend on that, because we encourage our members to do their best and to sacrifice and to recognize that God expects us to be generous. God expects us to demonstrate the love that the Good Samaritan demonstrated when he met the wounded man. Remember, he paid some money when he carried the wounded on his beast and told him if there are any extra expenses when he comes the next day, he will. All right, he would satisfy the demands of the guy staying in that hotel. This is amazing. So we have the individual responsibility, and we also have the corporate responsibility. Apart from that, we have the system of tithes and offerings, and in the section for offerings, we ask our members who are working to make a contribution on a monthly basis. So when a crisis strikes, when people in our community cry out and they have a disaster, in addition to the four groups coming together to pool their resources, what we have is the individual commitment. So we have individuals, all right, that when we call upon them and tell them, listen, this person has experienced a storm or a hurricane, this person, nobody's working in the home, the pandemic and everything else, we challenge our brethren, individually to make a sacrificial offering. So when that strikes, okay, we would have enough resources to assist those. And we believe not just in assisting Seventh Day Adventists, but people in the community. If there's a cry from a Hindu family or Catholic family or Baptist family or Muslim family, we would do our best to respond to the cries of the hurting. So on this 5th day of the poor, we are happy to be called by the Catholic Communion of Social Justice and Ministry to Migrants and Refugees. We think it's an excellent idea. And I believe all of us, pundits, imams, preachers, reverends, and all of us can come together and perhaps we could choose a couple of projects, all right? And show the powers that be that we could unite to respond to a specific challenge in the community. And we wouldn't wait on a crisis or a hurricane, but folks who are poor and perhaps the resources of that particular denomination may be exhausted, we could pool we believe in that at the community level, pooling our resources together. I wish, your Justice Commission all the best in the ministry to migrants and refugees. I wish all the church groups here, we're going through a tough time with this pandemic. Let us network and collaborate in a loving manner. All right, let not our doctrines divide us, but instead of building walls, let us tear down the walls and build bridges and show everyone from every communion, every religion, that we love them unconditionally. May God bless you and have a wonderful day. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clive Dottin from the Seventh Day Adventist Church. Another call for unity. It appears that all the religious leaders are thinking alike to improve the lot of all the vulnerable in Trinidad and Tobago, and that's so heartening. I'd like to invite Reverend Winston Mansingh from the Evangelical Council to speak next.
Good day again. As we continue our discussions on alleviating the poverty that faces our world, I would like to bring to your attention some of the efforts of the Pentecostal evangelical communities here in Trinidad and Tobago over a number of years. I want us to start by saying that while I recognize the fact that we might have been a little late out of the blocks because of the timing in which the Pentecostal church, the evangelical community, became more active here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have made significant strides within the last 3 decades here in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of addressing the social needs of the people. The Church of Jesus Christ, the Pentecostal evangelical community, would have done a few things, and I'd just like to mention. One, we have been actively involved in addressing social needs through the distribution of much needed food and other requirements, medicine, clothing, school supplies. We have been engaged in rebuilding and building even new homes for persons, families that have had their homes demolished or were living in conditions that were less than acceptable for human brothers and sisters. Dear friends, I want to let you know that the Pentecostal evangelical community would have set up various commissions to various organizations. We are not just one church, but we have denominational churches, independent churches. We have those that are bigger groups and those that are smaller groups. What I can tell you is that there have been commissions. There are existing right now committees and subcommittees, planning committees in some of the bigger organizations to help to organize strategies and plans that are geared towards addressing the issue of poverty. It is no longer just a haphazard sort of emotional response, but it has become a strategic, well planned out, executed, monitored, and evaluated response by the evangelical community over the last 3 decades. And I speak more of this time because this is the time frame for which we can have, we do have a little more reporting and feedback that we were able to obtain in discussing this matter and asking questions from the various organizations. I want to acknowledge that we need to be more strategic in how we would accumulate data and how we would, analyze this data so that we can present more facts to enable us to be more effective. Another thing that is very significant and that we would like to recommend, we know that education is a key driver if we are to alleviate poverty. Secondly, we need to consider prison reform. If we are to consider and if we are to look at some of the families that are affected by poverty, you would find that somewhere in the line there is a link to a person who is in prison, who has been imprisoned, and upon release from prison, there was insufficient reform, insufficient efforts to rehabilitate and reintegrate such a person into the community. That created stigma, and so that person was not able to become gainfully employed and to provide for his or her family those things that they needed. And so that brought some destruction to that family system. Another factor that we can that we saw is the use of illicit drugs. That has really decimated a number of families. How then are we addressing these? We have strategically set up programs that are educational in nature. We are addressing it from that perspective, teaching and empowering our people about how to address these issues meaningfully. There are some gaps that we are working on, to bridge these gaps and to mend the fences so that we can have a more holistic program. A very significant aspect of poverty alleviation, dear friends, comes from the church's responsibility to speak about the issues facing our nation and the behavior of persons who are charged with the responsibility to lead from a corporate and governance perspective. We must recognize, and we want these people to recognize, their role in leading with honor and integrity and understanding that there must be equity and justice for all. The poor must not be seen as a people who are just to receive handouts, but they must be seen as people who must be respected, empowered, and given an opportunity to improve themselves. Dear friends, education, justice, equity in our society. And thirdly, what is important for us to do to continue to alleviate, to address poverty and to alleviate this burden is to empower and challenge our people. And we have been doing that. We look at the last pandemic. I can say assuredly, in just one group of churches that I was able to speak with, the average church was putting out at least $20,000 in addressing some of the issues, and this is over a 6 months period. That is a considerable amount of money for churches that are smaller in congregations, are from rural communities. These, dear friends, are some of the things that we are doing at present to alleviate poverty, to address this issue, and to contribute in some way.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Reverend Winston Mansingh from the Evangelical Council. Once again, an echo of what was said before, to empower the poor and to have a sense of justice and equity. It's my pleasure now to call on Pundit Navin Oma-dath Maharaj from the Sanatan Dharma Maha Sabha to speak.
Jai Seetahal. Today it is estimated that over 700 people worldwide live in extreme poverty. This figure is expected to climb as a result of the continued economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We cannot deny that the pandemic has greatly affected the economies of many developed countries, and for developing countries such as Trinidad and Tobago as it is, the economic outlook is bleak. The Sanatan Dharma Maha Sabha of Trinidad and Tobago, from its inception in 1952, is a charitable as much as it is a religious organization. The organization has assisted less fortunate families directly and indirectly through schools and mandirs. Over the years, our schools have assisted students through the provision of books, stationery items, and even allowances are given to help with traveling expenses and the provision of food. At the community level, our mandirs regularly assist those who require basic necessities. Poverty in Trinidad and Tobago is nothing new to the SDMS, and it has been providing assistance for years. In 2018, the SDMS led the way in providing hampers to members of the national community in the aftermath of devastating floods. Our schools and mandirs also contributed, and we have done so over the years as flooding is now a regular occurrence. However, the present pandemic has meant that the SDMS has stepped up even more. Devices have been provided to many students to access online learning, and on a regular basis since last year, the SDMS has provided hampers and enhanced hamper distribution. We have provided such with the assistance from the government in Trinidad and Tobago and from many well-wishers. At the community level, our mandirs have not only distributed hampers, but have also provided cooked meals. In one casing example, ministry agencies reached out to the administration of one particular mandir to enhance the outreach of hamper distribution on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, for it was thought that the members of the mandir actually would be more in reach with the members of the community. The same goes for our ECC, primary and secondary schools. The Sanatan Dharma has worked closely with a number of stakeholders over the years on this very impacting social issue known as poverty. As previously mentioned, we have worked closely with the government over the last months to ensure that hampers were distributed to members of the national community. We have established a relationship as well with a number of NGOs with the objective of providing help to those in need. Recently, the SDMS was invited to be part of a workshop that was held by the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. As many of us will be aware, the Children's Authority has many responsibilities, which include the need to assist financial families through welfare grants, housing assistance, and conditional transfer program cards, or what we call food cards. In establishing at the present time, and hopefully for the future, a close relationship with the Children's Authority, the SDMS remains firm in its commitment to provide assistance to this body in addressing the many social issues, including poverty, that affect our children. In Trinidad and Tobago, the argument can be made that we do not lack the resources to help those in need. We have in fact witnessed on many occasions the desire of the private sector, religious organizations, and NGOs to readily assist. The problem has to do with the outreach, and here the government can be asked to play a more crucial role in getting what is needed to those in need. We can, for instance, establish food kitchens in rural and economically depressed areas to help those in need and make it a priority to use our local agricultural produce in the preparation of these meals. How at the same time do we ensure that there is equity in the distribution of food cards and welfare grants? Here the government plays a crucial or critical role. This role extends as well to providing greater employment opportunities and on reducing the economic burden on those who are already economically vulnerable. Additionally, the SDMS remains equally concerned about the reduction of the national scholarships, which to a large extent provide a pathway to children from economically challenged homes to access tertiary education. It is our hope that soon we'll be able to return to some level of normalcy. But even when we do, the issue of poverty may be further exacerbated by the pandemic, and families, unfortunately, may face the consequences for years to come. The SDMS, as we have always done, remains committed to assist in any way that it can to bring about remedy to this great social condition. Jai Seetahal.
Thank you very much, Pundit Navin Oma-dath Maharaj from the Sanatan Dharma Maha Sabha for that rousing talk. I would now like to ask Baba Neal Ryan Rawlins from the Orisha Faith to speak next.
Hello again. It is rather difficult to continue based on hearing Dr. Knolly Clarke's contribution on the aspects of poverty and the direction we should go. But in as much as I support Dr. Clarke's view on many things, what I like to say also is that the aspect of poverty could be graded because in my personal experience, I have come across persons who have the funds to pay their rent and bill, but they don't have money to buy food. And yes, when we hear poverty, they are all at different levels of poverty. But one of the most important aspect of it is providing food or a meal or groceries for the family. And it's something that I see almost every day. In my community is not an established community as some of the more established religious organizations. Our palais are in the home of the elder, which is a family home, and it comprises of the family and other persons who are Orisha devotees. And they are small in number, more or less 30 membership as a maximum. And what they do individually, there are 30 various shrines in all parts of Trinidad and Tobago, throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, from Port of Spain to Moruga, to Grande to Valencia, to the west. And what they have been doing over the years, that's the traditional elders. What they have been doing is helping the people by creating what they'll call a needy program or a needy people program funded by the members of the ile or the shrine or the community, the church. And basically what they do is to provide meals or groceries. There are some of the shrines who assist first-time students in the secondary school. We have purchased laptops, not laptops, iPads for school, books, do school grants, uniform, and the elder would always say, don't bring used books, buy new books for new students who are now entering the secondary school. But the basic issue is food. The basic issue is food. There are some of the shrines who do a weekly distribution of bread and sausage or something to go with the bread with drink to the needy, the very, very needy in their community. So each of the shrine function within their space and their community. And the community is not just persons who are Orisha devotees, it's general in the community. As have indicated, a lot of the elder shrines are managed by elder female who are in the late 70s and 80s, and they act as guardians in the community. They feed, they assist, they help with herbal medicine, they see about the sick, they see about the poor, they help in every way with their own fundings. We, as our community, we do not receive funding from any NGO or state enterprises. We were extremely shocked when we were part of the grant by government to assist with the needy with the food program, and that was distributed throughout the various shrines in Trinidad and Tobago, and they did the distribution because they knew the persons who were in need. It is still happening today. Prior to the grant, it still happens every month or every week. And in addition to that, even though there are monthly distributions, people pop into your home anytime, day or night, because they have nothing to eat. We try to encourage persons who live and who have property or a piece of land to plant something, put something in Mother Earth, plant the land, put something in the ground to help in every way. And that is an important issue that we need to push that return to the land, push the agriculture sector, rear some fowl, get some animals, plant something, because when you plant and it produces, there is always food. As a community, as a religious community in Trinidad and Tobago, there need to be a better equitable distribution, because some of there are places that people don't go. There are communities, when you go there, you must have a strong heart, a strong mind, and a strong stomach to see where people reside. It is real out here. There are persons who, as I said, might be working some small job that get little pay. There are children who only get 1 meal per day. So it is greater than what we think it is. I am on the ground, and we go out there and you see the conditions. And we try to assist with our own funding, with our own pocket, with our own money from our pockets. There's a lot of social organization that assist, but I think that one of the problem is that they don't reach down to ground zero. Most of the state enterprises don't reach the ground zero. There's a ground zero that exists in Trinidad and Tobago, and the pandemic has accelerated that process. And you know, in addition to all the other conditions that exist, you know, but so we try within our Orisha community to do the best that we can with our own resources. So I pay homage and honor to the mothers, to the ears of the spiritual yards that do what they can to assist the poor. With respect to education, there's a particular shrine in Diego Martin that the head of the shrine, she tries her best to promote culture by teaching. I think right now they're having some sessions with young children in the community. But again, she uses her own funds. So that in moving forward, you know, I pray that we really reactivate the agriculture sector. We try to reach down to ground zero. We try to have a better equitable distribution of grants, because you also have to add to the grants, you know. You have to add to it, because people out here, when they come to you, even at my home, they come calling, they have nothing to eat. You know, so I always have some package or something home here so that I can give a bag to needy people. So I pray that the world is in a crisis, and we need, Trinidad is not the only place, but if we really try to encourage people to go back to traditional ways of planting and wearing and sharing, I think we would achieve a lot more. So thank you very much. Ashe.
Thank you so much, Baba Neal Ryan Rawlins from the Council of Orisha Elders of Trinidad and Tobago, for enlightening us. We've all learned a lot, and you have helped carve the way forward as well. It's my pleasure now to introduce Pundit Satyanand Maharaj, who is the spiritual head of the Satya Anand Ashram, Temple of Truth and Bliss, to speak next.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and a very pleasant good day to all who are here with us on the panel and those of you who will be viewing later on. Poverty alleviation might be with us for a very, very long time to come, unless we get to the root cause of poverty. Now, we can deal with the immediate needs, which is really needs of hunger. And what we must also realize is that very quickly that we also have not just those who need food hampers because they are unemployed or unemployable, or they have lost the will to be employed, but we also have, because of the pandemic, we have the educated unemployed. We have also the working poor in this country who, as was mentioned earlier, they have the money to pay their rents and so on, but they may not have money to feed themselves a proper meal, take care of their children, and of course, get all the nutritional requirements necessary. And poverty extends not just to meals, but it extends to food, from food to clothing to shelter. Now, a word of caution to all our religious bodies is that we should not, while we reach out to those who are in need, use the opportunity to exploit the souls to fill our pews. This has always been a sore point with myself, and I brought it out because I feel that when we give, as in the case of my mandir, when we give, we do not look at race, religion, or culture. We look at the humanity of mankind. We look at that we should strive as much as possible to be our brother's keeper. And some of the many ways in which we can, and we have been giving and firstly taking care of the basic needs, which is food, is to redistribute. As you know, Pandits, whenever we do pujas, we do collect quite a lot of food stuff. Personally, Leela, you would know that because you gave me quite a lot for your father's funeral. That is redistributed, as repackaged and redistributed, and all the Pandits are engaged in this. Quite apart from that, quite apart from the formal way of doing things where temples come together, gather foodstuff, gather material, and distribute it to the poor, I want to make an appeal to those of you who can rummage around in your kitchen cupboards, because we often buy groceries that we don't use, that would go on to expire. And I want to encourage individuals, as we do encourage our flock, individuals to give with your own hands. Greater, the hands that serve are greater than the hands that pray. And I want to continue to reach out to the various communities to ask people to once a month, once a week, whatever you can, as you clean out your cupboards, don't wait for the food stuff to expire to give it, to throw it into the garbage, but on an ongoing and a continuous basis to create these food packages and reach out to the communities that need it most. All of us know who are the poor people in our communities. So food stuff is one way of helping to alleviate the immediate hunger, and now to address the root cause of poverty. So often people lose the will to do for themselves, and when you lose the will to do for yourself, then it's almost as if you've lost everything. And since we have a culture of transmitting to our children and to significant people in our lives our values, morals, and everything else, we have run the risk of transmitting to the next generation that it's okay to just put out your hand, throw up your hands in the air, say that, there's nothing I can do, and then live a life of poverty. And as Leela and I discussed earlier, we were discussing this earlier, there are people living in galvanized huts, feeding their children flour with water in lieu of milk that they can't afford. So finding the people to give these hampers to is also a very, very important part of, so if you make it, you need to take it. I need to take it to them, and you need to find these communities. And of course, as our dear brother from the Orisha faith was saying, you really have to have a lot of belly to go into some of these communities, especially if you become accustomed to the finery of life and the luxuries of life yourself. And this is a foreign way of living to you. But it is seen as an opportunity. In Hinduism, we have a saying that we have a duty and responsibility to humanity, and that is daily, and not monthly, not weekly, but daily. And so having the responsibility to our brothers and sisters, and having a responsibility to be their keeper, we not only have a responsibility to help to package the goods for them, but we have the responsibility to make sure it reaches the most vulnerable amongst us. And if we are our neighbor's keeper, if we take an interest in our neighbor's children, then we are taking an interest in our own safety and security. So quite apart from food, clothing, and shelter, which the poor are in lack of and need, we also have to look at what has transpired over the last 1 year and 8, 9 months now, where we have been dealing with a pandemic, where particularly children who will need education to lift them out of poverty. Because having taught for 28 years, I'm always heartened when I see families who are able to lift themselves out, because the children themselves, by the dint of their hard work and their perseverance, were able to acquire a good secondary education, and go on to become professionals or skills tradesmen, or whatever it is they might set out to do. And they are driven to do that. That in the last year and 8 months, 9 months, we have had a further dividing of the haves, those who have and those who have not. And it is technology that has divided us. I have been able to acquire devices for my children because since they could hold something in their hand, they had devices, right? Because we were preparing them for a new world. But what about the children who do not have these devices? Means of communication, means of learning. And that in itself can be categorized as a kind of poverty, where they have been denied learning, and many of them continue to be denied learning. Teachers are often running around looking for their students to give them packages so they can do their work and they can keep up. It's not the same thing. So in reaching out, we have encouraged our flock to make contact with the less fortunate in their communities and to look beyond our religious grouping. And I think that is particularly important, because you might belong to a temple that is quite an affluent temple, and there's no one in your immediate congregation who has that particular need. And so we need to look beyond, and we need to see ourselves in Trinidad and Tobago as not just separate religious groups, but we need to see ourselves as a nation filled with people of diverse cultures and religion. And so when we have to distribute whatever we have, let us look beyond our own flock. Let us look beyond the people of our own religious persuasion, so that we can lift all, because as a rising tide lifts all, I want to, and as we continue to encourage, do not look to race, religion, or culture when you give, and do not expect to use the opportunity to just gather and to fill pews, but rather to fill your heart with love because you have an opportunity to serve, and to fill a belly with food because you have something to give. Everything is a gift from God. And that is our universal theme. As we know, we celebrated Diwali quite recently, which is the advent of Mother Lakshmi. And that has to do with recognizing that God is a giver of wealth and prosperity. And so those of us who have, as in Pundit Bhadese's contribution, he talked about artha. Artha is wealth that is honestly acquired. And so part of the distribution of that wealth is not just to hoard it in the bank or see about your family or put away some for a rainy day, but it is about giving and helping others to rise even as you rise. So the Hindu community, both formally through the temples and the schools, I know would have been doing quite a lot, but we also encourage our membership to give privately. I have a view on whether we should record those we give charity to, and I think we should always leave it up to them to know if they want to go public or not. We shouldn't take that right from them to say thank you, and we should not take that right from them to quietly take what is given to them. But it also helps and serves to encourage others to give willingly, and most of all, whatever we give, we should give always with love. And in Hinduism, we have a particular saying: when we give a gift, we say Om Shri Krishna Arpanam. I give this not in my name, I give this in the name of God. And I want to publicly recognize the Pallari family, who has been giving tremendously by the truckloads of hampers. And many people might not know this, but they have actually over the years been building homes, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom homes, and furnishing it for families, not just here in Trinidad, but across the Caribbean. I think that it's worthy to note that, and they do not advertise what they do. They take no pictures and so on. They always say wherever they go, if you're a Hindu, If you're a Muslim, you're Christian, it is God that has sent this for you. This is not from us, this is from God. So Leela, I want to thank you very much for the invitation to join and to be here. And of course, I look forward to further invitations in the future. God bless and thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Pundit Maharaj, the spiritual head of the Satya Anand Ashram Temple of Truth and Bliss, and particularly inspiring were your words of lift all, and also the very revealing, the divide of technology and what that does to add to today's poverty in today's world. Thank you. We have all taken note. And Pundit Satyanand Maharaj was our final speaker. And I would like at this stage to thank you all for participating on World Day of the Poor 2021 on Trinity TV and CCSJ's Facebook page. This has been a day of hope, thanks to all participating clerics of all faiths, and inspiration to us all in the most unifying way to make our lives meaningful by helping those in need. And it's my absolute pleasure now to invite the Chair of the Catholic Commission for Social Justice, Ms. Leela Ramdeen, for her closing remarks.
Thank you, Ira, and thank you everyone for participating in what really, as Ira said, this is a time of hope in the midst of the pandemic when many are depressed and have lost their jobs or their businesses. We who belong to different faith communities can bring that hope. And today's event really lifted my own spirits, and I became very emotional because I realized, gosh, we're all in the same boat as companions, as the Pope Francis said, companions on the same journey. Our goal, our aim is to live by the tenets of our faith. And if you listen to what each person has said, in summary, there's a call for unity among the different faith communities, a call for us to develop projects together, to work together, to collaborate, to not only give handouts, but hand ups, to empower people. And one of the things that struck me was that we have to ensure that when we do so, we don't do it for recognition. We do it as Pundit Satyanand said, receive this in the name of God. All that we have is gift from God. And, in the Catholic Church, we believe in the concept of integral human development, authentic integral human development, which Pope Francis has developed over the years, saying that development is about each person and about every dimension of the person. And, Baba Neal talked about the fact that at the end of the day, what people wanted was food, hungry belly. But that's not the only dimension of a person. There's a political, spiritual, physical, mental, there's so many dimensions of a person. And some areas that I've been thinking about while speakers were sharing was about corporate social responsibility. The private sector was mentioned, but I think we need to call on the private sector even more to collaborate with religious communities, to share the gifts that they've been given with the wider community, and also the government. Now, I read in the paper yesterday that the Housing Ministry will be collaborating with UN Habitat on housing for migrants. When we have a cake, no matter how small the cake is in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the resources that we have, as Pundit said as well, equitable distribution. We do not have equitable distribution of our resources in Trinidad and Tobago. And there are too many who fall into the net, too many who if you're poor in an area where the roads are so bad that your children, you can't afford the taxi fare, because in the bad roads, the taxis put up their prices and many families cannot afford to pay the taxi fare for the children to go to school. That's not, so although we have free education, we cannot say that we have a level playing field, because many of our children cannot afford to go to school. Many of them cannot afford, like those online, including many migrants, cannot afford the data, to pay for the data, or they don't have connectivity in their area. So there is a lot we have to become, as I said in my article in The Guardian yesterday, we have to become advocates for the poor. And today it cheered me no end to hear the advocacy work that all our religious communities are engaged in. And the voice, all our voices together, not enough. We have to make sure that we become advocates of the powers that be, so that they would listen, so they will ensure that our constitution become a reality, that and our anthem, where we talk about every creed and race finding an equal place, they're not finding an equal place. And so although we were talking about poverty, and a lot of the time today we spent on focusing on material poverty, there is a lot more than that. As faith communities, you're developing the spiritual poverty of those who really need to reflect on God in their lives and to put God at the center of our lives. But we need more than that. In the Catholic Church, we have the corporal and spiritual works of mercy, but we need to make sure that we stand on our soapboxes and become fearless advocates. Why are the poor poor? I said recently, you know, there was a Brazilian archbishop called Dom Helder Camara, who said, when I give food to the poor, they call me a saint. But when I ask why the poor are poor, they call me a communist. We have to start asking more and more, why are the poor poor? And as one speaker rightly said, we need to involve them in the process of empowerment. When we say teach a man to fish, as Dr. Knolly Clarke, Reverend Dr. Knolly Clarke said, when we teach them to fish, it doesn't mean that we impose things on them. All our people come with gifts, with intellect that they have, and is just dormant or hidden. And our task is to lift them out of the doldrums that they find themselves in, because they're so oppressed by poverty and social exclusion. And remember, poverty is very much linked to social exclusion, and poverty is intergenerational. We signed in 2015, like many other countries, the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17, the first of which is to eradicate extreme poverty by 2030. And we know because of the pandemic, we've made retrograde steps. But that signing that, we have to do more than that. We have to look at how poverty is linked to what is termed social exclusion, which the UK government describes as a shorthand label for what can happen when individuals or areas suffer from a combination of linked problems, such as unemployment, poor skills, low incomes, poor housing, high crime environments, bad health, and family breakdown. And we know family breakdown is a key issue here. So we cannot look at poverty in isolation from all these other linked problems. Any project that we have that only focuses on filling hungry belly without looking at those other dimensions, poverty is multidimensional. Read the 2021 multidimensional poverty index and see where Trinidad and Tobago falls, and look at the indicators that are actually considered when this report is put together. We have to look at the multidimensional nature of poverty. So once again, I thank you all for your contribution. Let's pray that this will be the first of many, many other sessions like this that doesn't only focus on poverty, but focus on other social ills and other opportunities that we have for building a better T&T. No knight is coming on in shining armor on some horse, white or other color, to help us out of the difficulties we find ourselves in. We are very intelligent people in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a lot of religious communities whose the tenets of all our faith communities tell us that each of us is worth, gosh, more than we're giving up, more than we're meeting. The dignity of the human person is the vision, a moral vision for society. And we need to consider what kind of society we want to build. A society that is inclusive, that is just, that is equitable, and distributive justice is what we must embrace. So thank you all once again. God bless us all, and let's pray for each other. Thank you.
Thank you.